Talk about 5 ways that I've used that have helped me improve the way that I speak and become more articulate within my life. Now, the first thing is reading. Reading is key. You can see the sentences of someone that has dedicated their life to molding language. You can see their sentence structure. You end up picking up more vocabulary. You see the way that they structure story arcs. Becoming more articulate, the quickest way you can do this is through reading. Next step, writing. I love to journal, I love to write, I love to play with ideas, I love to experiment with different forms of fiction writing and just play around with words on paper. But just any form of writing is going to improve the way that you think. I especially recommend pen on paper, where you can't structure it later. You're forced to, in your head, create the best sequence without being able to delete it later. Pen on paper writing in a journal format is the easiest way to go about it. Just what did you do this day? If you show up to your journal and you see what your words look like on a paper and you come back to it day after day, I guarantee you, you will become better at using language and a more articulate person in general. Step number 3, utilize the pause. Sometimes someone will ask you a question and you're put on the spot and you're not sure what to answer, and you just start umming and ahhing and saying words, but you don't have an answer yet. The key is just to pause, to make friends with silence, to be okay with the space in between dialogue. Pause for a second, think about your thought, and then give your answer. And then even while you're giving your answer, don't feel like you need to fill up every single space. If you ran out of your train of thought, of your ideas, pause for a second and then continue. Make friends with silence. Make friends with the spaces between words. This will immediately make you more articulate, where you're thinking of what you're going to say before you say it instead of just saying anything. And that leads me to point number 4, which is aim to be concise. Instead of just saying every single thing that comes to your head and feeling like you need to talk at large about a subject to seem knowledgeable about it, fewer words, brevity is often so much more powerful. If you allow yourself to use the pause like you had earlier, like we talked about earlier, and then just simply think about, okay, what's the quickest way I can say this? What's the way I can say this in the least amount of words? This will add to you being more efficient with your language use when your constant aim is, how can I be as concise as possible? Last tip, number 5, speak to the camera. I would highly recommend starting a YouTube channel. I've been loving it. The research you need to do for it, the fact that you need to work on your speaking skills, but just record yourself in general if you don't feel like showing it to the world, and then look at how you're talking in front of the camera. Just the act of talking to the camera and then watching it in playback, you'll see where you're messing up. Are you using ums and ahs often? Do you talk a little too quietly? Besides just the way that you come across, which we will talk about in a different video, you'll see what words you're using, and you'll just become more comfortable with talking in general when you give yourself an assignment, something to talk about for a few minutes, and you just talk to the camera. So those are 5 ways that I've worked on my personal speech articulation and my way with words, and I've seen massive changes in the way that I'm able to communicate by constantly using these 5 different tools: writing, reading, using pauses, aiming to be concise with my words, and lastly, recording myself through these YouTube videos in general, just for myself, that I can review later and see what I need to work on. Utilizing these 5 tools has greatly helped me with the way that I speak.